Michael had always wanted a place to call his own. A piece of land where he could build a small home, plant a garden, and watch his children play freely under the open sky. City life was busy and noisy, and he dreamed of peace and quiet, a calm place far away from all the rush. After years of saving, Michael finally bought a small piece of land in a neighborhood outside the city. It was not big or fancy, but to him, it was perfect. The trees were tall and green, the air smelled fresh, and the streets were peaceful. This land was more than just dirt and grass. It was a new start, a chance to build a future for his family. When Michael first arrived at his new land, the sun was shining, and birds were singing. He felt a wave of happiness and hope. He walked around, imagining where the house would stand, where the children would run and play, and where he could plant his favorite flowers. The soil was soft and ready. Everything seemed perfect. In the next few days, Michael began working on his land. He cleaned up fallen branches, cut the tall grass, and set up a small shed to keep his tools. Every day, he spent hours there, making the land ready for his dream home. The neighborhood was quiet, with only a few houses scattered around. Michael met some neighbors who smiled and greeted him kindly. They seemed friendly and helpful. It felt like a place where families cared for each other. But Michael did not know that under this quiet neighborhood was a web of hidden rules and secret powers, rules he had never heard about. This neighborhood was part of a homeowners association, or HOA, a group that controlled many things about the land and houses. Most people in the area followed the rules without question, but Michael was new and did not understand the full power the HOA held. One afternoon, Michael was working in his garden. He had just planted some seeds for tomatoes and sunflowers. The sun was warm on his face, and a gentle breeze made the leaves dance. It was a perfect day. Then, he noticed a car driving slowly down the street. The car was plain, but the men inside wore dark uniforms with badges. They looked official. Michael watched carefully as the men stopped in front of his land. One of them stepped out and began taking pictures of the garden, the shed, and the empty spaces. Another man spoke quietly into a radio. Michael felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Something was wrong. He walked over to the men and asked, "Can I help you? What are you doing here?" The man with the badge smiled, but his eyes were cold. "We're from the HOA enforcement team. We're here to inspect your property." Michael blinked. "But I just bought this land. I didn't know there was an HOA." The man's smile disappeared. "You're supposed to follow the rules. There are rules about what you can do on your land. If you don't follow them, the HOA has the right to take action." Michael's heart started to beat faster. He didn't understand what rules they were talking about. No one had told him about any rules before he bought the land. He felt confused and a little scared. That night, Michael sat at his kitchen table, staring at the papers from the HOA. There were many rules written in small letters, rules about fences, trees, paint colors, and even about how many cars could be parked on the property. But nothing explained what the men had said about taking his land. Michael called the HOA office the next morning. A woman answered the phone and told him there were complaints from neighbors about his property. Some said the shed was too big. Others said the garden was messy. Michael felt frustrated. He had only just started, and already people were complaining. Days passed, and the visits from the HOA enforcement team became more frequent. They left letters and warnings, saying Michael must fix his property or face fines. But the fines grew larger and larger, and Michael could not understand why. One afternoon, Michael found a letter that made his hands shake. The HOA said they planned to take legal action to seize his land because he was not following their rules. It felt like a nightmare. How could they take away something he had worked so hard for? How could strangers claim his land without a fair reason? Michael decided he could not give up. He knew he had to fight, but he did not know how. The men who came to his land looked like police officers, but they were not. They had no real authority to take his property. This was not justice. This was wrong. For the first time, Michael felt a strong fire inside him, a fire to protect his land, his dream, and his family. He wanted to stand up and show these men they could not scare him. But more than that, he wanted to find out who was behind all this and why they were trying to take away what was his. That night, as he looked at the stars shining over his land, Michael made a silent promise. He would not let anyone take his home without a fight. He would become his own judge and protector. Whatever it took. Michael sat at his kitchen table, staring at the letter from the HOA. The paper was thick with legal words he barely understood. It said that if he didn't follow the rules, the HOA would take his land away. His hands trembled. He had worked so hard to buy this place. The thought of losing it crushed him. But Michael was not the type to give up easily. His mind raced with questions. Who were these men in uniform? How could they act like police officers without real power? And why was the HOA so eager to take his land? He knew he needed help. But who could he trust? The neighborhood seemed friendly, but now he wasn't sure. Were some neighbors involved in this? Had they complained on purpose? The mystery made him feel alone and scared. Michael spent the next few days learning everything he could about the HOA. He read the papers they had given him, talked to a few neighbors, and searched online. The more he learned, the more confused he became. The rules were strict and complicated. But the way the HOA was acting, sending fake officers and threatening to seize land, that was not normal. It felt like bullying. One afternoon, Michael decided to visit the local government office. Maybe there, he could find someone who knew how to stop the HOA's unfair actions. The office was busy, with people coming and going. A kind woman behind the desk listened carefully as Michael explained his problem. "You're not the first person to have trouble with HOAs," she said quietly. "Sometimes they overstep their power. But remember, they do have some legal rights. The key is to know your rights too." Michael nodded. She gave him the name of a lawyer who helped people fight unfair HOA actions. "Talk to him," she said. "You don't have to fight alone." That evening, Michael called the lawyer. His name was Mr. Davis, a calm man with a patient voice. He listened carefully and agreed to meet Michael the next day. When Michael arrived at Mr. Davis's office, he felt hope for the first time in weeks. The lawyer looked at all the letters and papers and said, "Michael, this is a complicated case, but it's not impossible. These HOA cops are pretending to be officials, and that's illegal. They can't take your land without a proper court order. We can fight this." Michael felt a spark inside him grow stronger. "What should I do?" "First," Mr. Davis said, "we will gather all the evidence. Take pictures, keep all letters, write down every visit from those men. We will show that they have no real power. Then, we will file a case to stop the HOA from trying to take your land." Michael nodded eagerly. For the first time, the battle felt winnable. The next few days were busy and hard. Michael kept careful records. Every time the HOA officers came, he asked questions and took videos. He also spoke to neighbors, trying to find out if anyone else had problems with the HOA. To his surprise, a few neighbors quietly shared their own stories about unfair fines, strange rules, and fear of speaking up. Michael realized he was not alone. The HOA's control was strong, but so was the courage of the people who lived there. One evening, while Michael was at home, he heard a loud knock on the door. It was two men in the same dark uniforms. Their badges shone, but Michael knew better now. "We're here to give you a final warning," one said. "If you don't remove the shed and clean your garden, we will take legal action." Michael stood tall. "You don't have any legal power. I've spoken to a lawyer. I will not let you take my land." The men looked surprised but said nothing. They left quickly. That night, Michael sat with his family. He told them about the visit. His children looked worried, but his wife smiled gently. "We're in this together," she said. "We will protect our home." The next morning, Michael went to the courthouse with Mr. Davis. They filed a formal complaint against the HOA and the fake officers. The judge listened carefully as Mr. Davis explained how the HOA was pretending to be law enforcement and threatening to take land illegally. The judge agreed to stop the HOA's actions until the case was decided. It was a small victory, but it gave Michael hope. Back at his land, Michael felt stronger than ever. The fight was not over, but he was ready. He had found a friend in the law, and he had found his own voice. No longer would he be afraid of the fake cops or the secret powers trying to take what was his. As the sun set, Michael looked at his land, the place of his dreams and hard work. He knew the road ahead would be long, but he was ready to walk it. For his family. For his future. After the court granted Michael a temporary order to stop the HOA from acting against him, a small weight lifted from his shoulders. But deep inside, Michael knew the battle was far from over. The fake officers had not disappeared, and the HOA still held power over many neighbors. He had to find out who was behind this plan to take his land and why. Michael spent the next few days visiting neighbors and asking gentle questions. Some were quiet and scared, others were angry but didn't want to risk their own homes by speaking out loud. It was clear that the HOA had a strong grip on the neighborhood, controlling more than just the rules, it controlled fear. One afternoon, Michael met Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for more than 30 years. She had seen many changes and quietly watched how the HOA grew stronger. The HOA, Mrs. Thompson said softly, used to be just a group to help with the neighborhood's gardens and clean the streets. But now, they act like rulers. If you don't obey, they punish you. Michael nodded. But who runs the HOA? Who lets them do this? Mrs. Thompson looked around carefully, then whispered, "A man named Mr. Collins. He owns several houses here and wants to control everything. Some say he even makes money by forcing people to pay fines or sell their land." Michael's heart pounded. Could Mr. Collins be the real enemy? That night, Michael searched public records online. He found out that Mr. Collins did own several properties in the area and had been involved with the HOA for many years. There were even complaints about him, but no one had stopped him. Michael decided he needed proof. If he wanted to win the fight, he had to show the judge and the community the truth behind the fake officers and the threats. The next morning, Michael and Mr. Davis planned their next move. "We will request documents from the HOA," Mr. Davis said. "We want to see their rules, contracts, and who makes the decisions. If they are using fake officers, it could be illegal. We can stop them." But Michael knew it wouldn't be easy. Mr. Collins was powerful and would not give up without a fight. Over the following weeks, Michael worked hard. He collected all letters, pictures and videos from the fake officers. He talked with neighbors quietly, gathering stories of unfair treatment and secret fines. Some were afraid to speak, but others felt hope because of Michael's courage. One day, while walking near his land, Michael saw the fake officers again. They looked around, talking to neighbors and taking notes. This time, Michael was ready. He quietly filmed them and even asked a few questions. "Why do you pretend to be police?" he asked. "Who gave you that right?" The men only smiled and walked away. Michael knew he had to share this with the court. Meanwhile, Mr. Davis filed requests for HOA documents and prepared for the next hearing. The fight was growing bigger, and the neighborhood was watching. Then, a surprising thing happened. A few neighbors who had been silent started coming forward. They spoke about their own experiences with the HOA's unfair rules and how they were afraid to lose their homes. They wanted Michael to win. One neighbor, Sarah, said, "I was afraid at first, but you gave me hope. If we stand together, the HOA cannot win." Michael felt his heart warm. He was no longer alone. The community was waking up. At the next court hearing, Mr. Davis presented the evidence. The judge listened as Michael showed videos of the fake officers, letters filled with threats, and stories from neighbors. The truth was clear: the HOA had gone too far. The judge looked serious. If the HOA is using fake law enforcement, that is illegal. This court will investigate further. Until then, no action can be taken against Mr. Michael's property. Michael felt a wave of relief. This was a victory, but he knew the fight was still ahead. After the hearing, Michael spoke to Mr. Collins at a neighborhood meeting. The man was cold and calm, but Michael saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "I am not afraid of you," Michael said firmly. "This land belongs to me, and I will protect it." Mr. Collins smiled thinly. "We will see about that." That night, Michael sat on his porch and looked at the stars. The fight was tough, but he was ready. For the first time, he believed that justice could win over fear and lies. He thought about his family and how much this land meant to them. This was more than a battle over property, it was a fight for their future, for their right to live without fear. Michael whispered to the night, "I won't give up. No matter what." Days turned into weeks, but Michael did not stop. Every morning, he woke up with a clear purpose: to protect his land and fight the fake HOA cops who wanted to take it away. The fight was not easy, but Michael had something strong: hope. The court had given a temporary order to stop the HOA from taking any action against Michael's property. But Mr. Collins and his group were still watching, still trying to find ways to pressure Michael. The fake officers still showed up, but now Michael was ready for them. He recorded everything and stayed calm. One afternoon, Michael received an unexpected visit from the local newspaper reporter, Emma. She had heard about Michael's case and wanted to tell his story to the public. "I believe people need to know what's happening," Emma said, smiling warmly. "Your story could help many others facing the same problem." Michael was nervous but agreed. Emma spent hours asking questions, taking pictures, and listening to Michael's story. She promised to write a fair and clear article. A few days later, the article was published online and in the local newspaper. The headline read, "Fake HOA cops trying to seize land, a family's fight for justice." Michael's story touched many hearts. Neighbors who had been quiet started calling Michael. Some wanted to share their own experiences. Others wanted to support him. Slowly, a small community of people stood behind Michael, ready to speak up. The power of the story surprised even Michael. The fake officers and the HOA could no longer act in secret. Their actions were now under public watch. One morning, Michael received a letter from the HOA. It was different this time, less threatening, more cautious. They said they wanted to meet and discuss the problem peacefully. Michael saw this as a sign. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to solve this without more conflict. He agreed to meet Mr. Collins and the HOA board at the community center. The day of the meeting arrived. The room was filled with neighbors, some curious, some worried. Mr. Collins sat at the front, confident as always. Michael took a deep breath and stepped forward. He spoke clearly, telling the story of the fake officers, the threats, and the fight to protect his land. He showed the videos, the letters, and the support from neighbors. Mr. Collins listened but said little. Then, one by one, neighbors stood up. They shared their own stories of unfair rules, secret fines, and fear of speaking out. The room grew quiet as the truth came out. Mr. Collins looked uncomfortable. For the first time, the power he held seemed to weaken. Michael saw hope in the eyes of the people around him. They were no longer afraid. After hours of discussion, the HOA board agreed to pause all actions against Michael's land. They promised to review their rules and improve how they communicate with neighbors. It was a small victory, but it was important. Michael thanked the neighbors for their courage and promised to keep fighting for a fair community. As the meeting ended, Emma took Michael aside. "Your story made a difference," she said. "Keep speaking out. People are listening." Michael smiled, feeling stronger than ever. That night, as he sat by the fire with his family, Michael looked at his land under the stars. The journey was hard, but it was worth it. He had learned that courage was not the absence of fear but the choice to stand up despite it. And now, Michael knew he was not alone. Together, they could protect their homes and their dreams. The calm after the community meeting did not last long. Michael hoped that the HOA board's promise to stop their harsh actions would bring peace. But Mr. Collins was a man who didn't give up easily. The fight for Michael's land was far from over. A week after the meeting, Michael found a letter slipped under his door. It was from the HOA, but this time, it was a legal notice with complicated words. The letter said that despite the meeting, the HOA planned to file a lawsuit to claim ownership of part of his land. Michael's heart sank. He had just begun to believe that the battle could end peacefully. Now, it seemed the fight was going deeper and more serious. Determined not to give up, Michael called Mr. Davis, his lawyer. They met the next day to discuss a plan. "This is serious," Mr. Davis said, looking at the papers. "But we have a strong case. The HOA has no real right to take your land, especially by using fake officers. We must prepare for court." Michael listened carefully. The thought of going to court was scary, but he knew it was the only way to protect his family and their future. Meanwhile, Michael's neighbors continued to support him. Sarah, one of the neighbors who had spoken up at the meeting, offered to help gather more evidence. "I want to be sure that no one else loses their land like this," she said. Together, they organized a group of residents who had been affected by the HOA's strict rules and unfair fines. They shared their stories and collected documents, letters, and photos. The group wanted to stand strong against the unfair power. Michael felt a new strength. This was no longer just his fight. It was a fight for the whole neighborhood. The court date arrived quickly. Michael and Mr. Davis prepared their evidence carefully. The fake officers' videos, letters filled with threats, and stories from neighbors were all part of the case. In the courtroom, the HOA was represented by a different lawyer. Mr. Collins sat quietly, watching. The judge listened carefully as Mr. Davis spoke. "Your Honor, the HOA has overstepped its power. It cannot use fake officers to threaten residents or take their land without proper legal process." The HOA's lawyer argued back, saying the HOA had the right to enforce rules and collect fines. But the judge was clear. Using fake law enforcement is illegal. If the HOA wants to enforce rules, it must do so through legal channels, not by threats or deception. Michael watched the judge's face, hoping for justice. After many hours, the judge made a decision. The HOA's attempt to claim Michael's land was denied. The HOA was ordered to stop sending fake officers and to follow the law when dealing with residents. It was a big victory, but the judge also reminded everyone that all residents must follow fair and clear rules. The HOA could still work to protect the neighborhood, but it must do so honestly. Back at home, Michael felt relief and hope. His land was safe, and the truth had come out. That evening, as he sat with his family, Michael looked at the stars. The fight had been long and hard, but they had won a battle. He knew there might be more challenges ahead, but now he felt ready. His wife smiled and said, "We are proud of you. You didn't just fight for land, you fought for what's right." Michael nodded. "This land is more than soil and trees. It's our future." In the following weeks, the neighborhood began to change. The HOA started to listen more to residents and made efforts to improve communication. Michael and the group of neighbors stayed involved, making sure the new rules were fair. One afternoon, Michael received a letter from the HOA board. It was an invitation to join a community committee to help create better rules. Michael smiled. After months of fighting, he was being asked to help shape the future. He thought back to the first day when the fake officers arrived and realized how far he had come. What started as a scary and lonely fight had become a movement for fairness and justice. Michael knew the road ahead would not always be easy, but now he had a voice and a community. Together, they could build a neighborhood where everyone felt safe and respected. As the sun set over his land, Michael felt peace. The battle for his land had changed him. It had made him stronger and more determined. And one thing was clear: no one would take his home without a fight. After the court ruled in Michael's favor, life in the neighborhood slowly began to change. The fake officers disappeared, and the HOA started to act differently. The battle had been hard, but it had opened the door for a better future. Michael was invited to join the new community committee. The committee's goal was to create fair rules that everyone could agree on, without fear or threats. Michael felt proud but also nervous. He had never been part of something like this before. At the first meeting, the room was full of neighbors, some friendly, some still quiet. Mr. Collins was there too, but he stayed mostly silent, watching carefully. Michael stood up and spoke clearly. "We all want a safe and peaceful neighborhood. But rules must be fair. No one should feel afraid in their own home." The room was silent for a moment, then a few people nodded in agreement. The committee began working together. They listened to everyone's ideas and worries. Some neighbors wanted more help fixing broken fences or cleaning the streets. Others wanted clear rules about gardens and noise. Michael was surprised by how much people cared. He realized that the problem was not the rules themselves, but how they were made and enforced. Slowly, the HOA's power started to balance with the community's voice. The fake officers were gone, and real officers from the town's police department agreed to help with safety if needed. One evening, after a long meeting, Michael walked home with Sarah, the neighbor who had helped him from the start. I never thought I'd see the day when we could all talk like this, Sarah said quietly. You made a big difference. Michael smiled. We did it together. It wasn't just me. Sarah nodded. You showed us all that standing up is possible. At home, Michael felt a new peace. His family was safe, and their land was protected. But more than that, he had helped create a stronger community. His children played in the garden without worry, and his wife said their home felt warmer than ever. One weekend, the neighborhood organized a block party. There was music, food, and laughter. Michael watched as neighbors talked and smiled. It was a celebration of their new beginning. Mr. Collins was there too, talking quietly with some neighbors. Michael saw a change in the man. He looked less sure, more thoughtful. During the party, Michael spoke with the local police officer, Officer Hayes, who had joined the community after the fake officers disappeared. Michael, your courage helped us understand the problem, Officer Hayes said. We're here to keep the neighborhood safe, but only the right way. Michael nodded. It feels good to have real support. The party ended with everyone feeling hopeful. But Michael knew that trust and fairness would take time to grow. The fight had shown him that people could change, but only if given the chance. As the stars appeared, Michael looked at his land and smiled. The battle had been about more than property. It had been about respect, honesty, and community. He thought about the fake officers, the threats, and the long days of worry. But now, those fears were replaced by hope. Michael knew challenges would come again, but he was ready. Not just to protect his land, but to help build a neighborhood where everyone could live in peace. And most importantly, he knew that when people stand together, no one, not even fake cops or powerful men, could break their spirit. Michael whispered to the night, "This is our home. And we will protect it together." Months passed since the courtroom victory. Michael's life began to feel normal again, but he never forgot the long fight he had been through. The fake HOA cops, the threats, the fear, all those memories remained as a reminder of what could happen when power is misused. The community committee continued to meet regularly. The rules were rewritten with fairness and kindness. Neighbors who had once been afraid now spoke up at meetings, sharing ideas and concerns. Michael watched with pride as the neighborhood slowly healed. One day, Michael received an invitation to speak at the town hall. The mayor wanted him to share his story so other neighborhoods could learn from his experience. Michael felt nervous but honored. Standing in front of a room full of people, Michael took a deep breath. He told his story clearly, from the first time the fake officers came to his land to the day the court stopped the HOA's unfair actions. He spoke about fear, courage, and the power of community. When I first faced the fake HOA cops, I felt alone and scared, Michael said. But I learned that standing up for what's right is never easy. It takes patience, strength, and the support of others. The audience listened quietly. When Michael finished, they gave him a warm round of applause. After the speech, many people came forward to thank him. Some shared their own problems with unfair HOAs. Others asked how they could start similar fights in their neighborhoods. Michael smiled. It's not just about fighting, he said. It's about coming together and making sure everyone is heard. Back at home, Michael felt a new peace. The battle had changed him, teaching lessons about justice and hope. His family was safe, and their land was truly theirs. But the fight had also opened something bigger: the chance to help others and build stronger communities. One afternoon, Michael sat with Sarah and a few neighbors in the park. They talked about the future, how to keep the neighborhood safe and fair for all families. "We did something good here," Sarah said softly. "I feel like this place is home now." Michael nodded. "And it will stay that way because we care." As the sun set, Michael looked around at the faces of his neighbors, people who had once been strangers but now were friends. The fear had gone. In its place was trust. Michael thought about the fake officers who had tried to scare him. They had failed. The true strength was not in uniforms or threats but in standing up together for what is right. He smiled and said quietly, "This is only the beginning." The land where Michael and his family lived was more than just soil and trees. It was a symbol of hope and courage. A place where justice had won and where a community had come alive. Michael's story was no longer just his. It belonged to everyone who believed in fairness, honesty, and the power of standing up for home. As stars filled the night sky, Michael felt calm. The battle was over, but the journey of building a better future had just begun. He closed his eyes, grateful for the fight, for the people who stood beside him, and for the home they had saved.